Chapter 1: The Death of a Genius, the Birth of a Wizard. The sterile air of the laboratory was heavy with tension. Dr. Edward McAllister sat hunched over his console, the faint glow of a dozen holographic panels reflecting off his lined, pale face. His breath was shallow, his fingers trembling slightly as he scrolled through endless lines of data. 3 years, he muttered, the rasp of exhaustion coating his words. 3 years, and still the damned stone won't yield its secrets. The stone lay at the center of the room on a suspension platform. Roughly the size of a child's fist, its surface shimmered faintly, an uncanny swirl of metallic sheen and organic pulsing veins that seemed to throb with an alien heartbeat. It was beautiful, terrifying, and utterly incomprehensible. The merge stone. His discovery. His curse. Edward had dedicated his life to the Supergene project, the crowning jewel of the global Confederation Empire's supremacy. It was through his breakthroughs that soldiers had transcended mortal limits, their bones strengthened, their muscles enhanced, their reflexes sharpened to inhuman speeds. The Empire hailed him as one of its brightest minds, a true child of the Confederation's promise. But even for him, the stone was beyond reach. The device consumed power like a black hole. No energy source on Earth seemed sufficient to stabilize its reaction for longer than a few seconds. It fused matter, flesh with steel, wood with glass, without shattering the properties of either, creating chimeras that defied natural law. Yet it destroyed every attempt at control. And Edward, a man who had stood at the summit of humanity's science, had nothing. That was until a new discovery on Mars had begun dominating academic headlines: mana stones. Unlike traditional energy sources, mana stones radiated a peculiar resonance. Scientists, cautious as ever, described it as spiritual frequency, though theologians claimed it was proof of a divine essence. Edward scoffed at their superstition. To him, mana stones were just another energy crystal, one that, hopefully, could finally awaken the merged stone's true nature. Tonight, he would find out. He arranged 12 mana stones in a pentagonal array on the reinforced platform, each humming faintly as they synced with the field generator. He adjusted their resonance values one last time, sweat beading on his brow despite the freezing Arctic air conditioning. Perfect. This has to work. The merged stone, resting innocently at the array's center, pulsed once, then again. Edward's heart skipped a beat. Its veins glowed with an inner light, brighter, stronger, alive. The surrounding mana stones shuddered, discharging radiant streams into the array. The platform vibrated. The lights flickered. An otherworldly hum filled the lab. Edward's eyes widened. It's responding. Then the reaction spiraled out of control. The merged stone thrashed violently, warping gravity itself as sparks of green and violet energy lashed across the room. Alarms blared, containment fields strained, and the mana stones began cracking under the pressure. No, not now. Fear seized him, not for his life, but for the priceless artifact that had consumed his existence. Desperation outweighed reason. He rushed forward, stretching his hand toward the stone. Calm down, just a little more. The moment his skin touched the alien surface, his body convulsed. A violent surge of power tore through flesh and soul alike. Pain unlike anything he had known, pain that eclipsed fire, cold, and lightning, ripped him apart. Edward screamed, but no sound left his lips. His vision shattered. His mind blurred. The last thing he saw was the merged stone crumbling to dust, dissolving like sand caught in the wind. And then, nothing. When he awoke, the silence was unbearable. Edward's eyes snapped open. He gasped, expecting sterile laboratory walls, scorched machinery, or the cold metal of a morgue. Instead, he was staring at carved wooden beams above him, old yet polished, their surface painted with symbols that flickered faintly like runes. He sat up sharply. His body moved strangely, lighter, yet weaker. His chest heaved as unfamiliar lungs drew an air-scented knot of sterile disinfectant, but of ink, parchment, and burning candles. What? He staggered to his feet, but the instant he did, pain exploded in his skull. Memories, foreign, invasive, poured into his consciousness like a flood breaking through a shattered dam. Images of a sprawling forest kingdom. The name Phi Wood. A tower where robed figures practiced spells. A proud family crest, the Goldbeer sigil, a roaring golden beast upon a black shield. Faces of nobles, retainers, knights, and enemies. And a name that pierced through it all, Glick Goldbeer. Edward clutched his head, falling to his knees. The memories were not just dreams. They were real. They belonged to the body he now inhabited. I am, Glick Goldbeer, he whispered, his voice trembling as fragments aligned. The truth hit him like a sledgehammer. He was no longer Edward McAllister, scientist of the Empire. He was Viscount Glick Goldbeer, heir to a noble merchant family elevated by valor and service. A minor aristocrat within the kingdom of Wood, who had dabbled in wizardry at the Great Tower before abandoning it to inherit his family's title. A wizard apprentice. A noble. A man both respected and resented. Edward, no, Glick, shivered as he stood before a tall mirror on the wall. The reflection that stared back was not his aged, weary face, but that of a young man in his 20s. Strong jaw, golden brown eyes, hair dark as night. His robes bore the Goldbeer crest, stitched proudly over his chest. This isn't possible, he muttered. I should be dead. And yet, here he was. The merge stone had killed him. Or perhaps, it had merged him with this new existence. The implications struck him cold. In his world, science had unlocked the supergene. Here, the world pulsed with mana, the very energy he had tried to harness. Wizards ruled this realm, their path a hierarchy of rings, each level an unfathomable leap beyond mortal limits. He remembered clearly from Glick's memories. Apprentices began at 0 rings, dabbling in simple cantrips, before progressing to 3 rings. Formal wizards commanded true power from 4 to 7 rings. Beyond them stretched realms of near-divine mastery, culminating in the magic law gods at 27 rings. Edward, now Glick, was at the very bottom. A 0-ring apprentice. A bitter laugh escaped his lips. From the peak of genetic science, to the dirt of wizardry. Yet even as he said it, a flicker of excitement stirred in his chest. He was alive. Not only alive, reborn in a world where mana replaced the rigid boundaries of science, where knowledge and power intertwined into limitless possibilities. He clenched his fists. This is my chance. If the merge stone had taught him anything, it was that merging, the fusion of impossible concepts, was the path forward. He was no longer bound by the Confederation's narrow definitions of progress. Here, he could blend the rationality of science with the mystery of magic. He would start again, from 0 rings, and he would climb. But first, he needed to understand the world he now lived in. Through Glick's memories, the pieces began to align. The wizarding world was fractured into 3 great factions. White wizards, upholders of order and law. Gray wizards, those who walked the path of neutrality, balancing both. Black wizards, seekers of chaos. Unbound by morality. The Goldbeer family, though noble, was small. Merchants elevated by valor, they lacked the deep-rooted prestige of ancient wizarding clans. Their power lay in trade, coin, and pragmatic alliances. For Glick to thrive, no, for Edward McAllister to truly rise again, he would need strength. Strength only a true wizard could wield. The door to the study creaked open. A servant, dressed in the livery of the Goldbeer household, stepped in and bowed low. My lord, the man said respectfully, the steward requests your presence. Matters of estate require your judgment. Glick turned, steadying himself. The weight of nobility pressed down on him, alien yet undeniable. In his past life, he had been a scientist serving an empire. Now, he was a lord, small, yes, but with power over lives and land. Very well, he replied, his voice calmer than he felt. Tell the steward I will attend shortly. The servant bowed again and withdrew. Alone once more, Glick faced his reflection in the mirror. His eyes burned with determination. I was Edward McAllister, genius of the Confederation. Now I am Glick Goldbeer, wizard apprentice and viscount. He placed a hand over his chest, feeling the unfamiliar thrum of mana within. This time, I will not stop at science. This time, I will master both magic and knowledge. The merge stone may be gone, but its path remains. And thus began his journey. The journey of a man reborn. A man who would merge spells, merge paths, and create something the wizarding world had never seen before. A mutation of magic itself. Chapter 2 The Voice Within. The night was unnervingly quiet. Viscount Glick Goldbeer sat in his study, a half-burnt candle flickering beside stacks of parchments. The quill in his hand hovered over the page, but he had not written a word. His mind wandered back, again and again, to the final moments of Edward McAllister's life. The humming resonance of the merge stone. The surge of violent energy. The sensation of his very soul being torn apart. And then, this body, this world. His fingers clenched around the quill, snapping it. Ink spilled across the page. Why me? Why here? He muttered under his breath. And the merge stone, where did it go? Did it destroy me, or bring me here? The questions spiraled endlessly, gnawing at him. He had dedicated decades of research to understanding the stone, only for it to crumble into dust in his hands. Now, inexplicably, he had awoken in another life. Was it reincarnation? Dimensional transference? Or was this all some hallucination of a dying mind? He slammed his palm onto the desk. Think, Edward, think. There must be a pattern. Suddenly, a voice resonated inside his head. Clear, mechanical, cold, host soul stable, successful fusion detected, super merge system, unlocked. Glick froze. His breath hitched. What? The voice was not his own. It was not human. It was the same cold detachment he remembered from the AI modules of his old world, yet layered with something else, something infused with mana. The voice continued. Warning. Host energy level too low. Please upgrade host spiritual C to unlock more of system abilities. Current unlocked functions. 1. Spell merge module. Merge spells into inorganic or organic substances, granting spell-like abilities or enhancements. Current spell level. 0 ring. 2. Host status module. Monitor stat development. Gain plus 1% permanent stat or affinity from every merged creature or item. The words struck him like lightning. His chest rose and fell rapidly. A system, like some kind of interface. He rubbed his temples. This was absurd. But then again, so was waking up in another man's body, in a world ruled by wizards. Perhaps this was the final gift, or curse, of the merge stone. Slowly, cautiously, he whispered, System, show me my status. At once, a translucent panel appeared before his eyes. Not in the air, but directly within his consciousness. Letters burned faintly, as though etched into the void of his mind. Host. Glick Goldbeer Edward McAllister. Race. Human, mortal. Rank. Wizard Apprentice 0 ring, low. Spiritual C capacity, 12 100ths. Physical stats. Strength, 9. Agility, 11. Constitution, 10. Mental stats. Intelligence, 16. Willpower, 14. Perception, 12. Affinities. Transmutation, minor. Illusion, trace. Necromancy, trace. System modules. Spell merge module, active. Host status module, active. System energy source, mana plus soul essence. Glick's eyes widened as he read the panel. His scientist's instincts surged to life, curiosity burning away his fear. This is quantification, he breathed. The very thing every researcher dreams of, a model that measures the intangible. In his past life, the problem with the merge stone had always been control. The stone consumed energy, merged wildly, and destroyed every test subject. But now, here was a system that not only survived the fusion, but imposed structure. It categorized his abilities, defined his limits, and, most importantly, it promised growth. His pulse quickened. A spell merge module, does that mean I can merge spells with objects? Living things. The implications were staggering. If true, this was far beyond the narrow domains of wizardry he'd glimpsed in Glick's inherited memories. Wizards mastered one path, one school. But he could merge. A grin tugged at his lips. This is it. This is the path forward. But his joy was short-lived. The system's warning echoed again. Host energy level is insufficient. Recommend expanding spiritual C capacity. His face darkened. Spiritual C. In this world, it was the foundation of wizardry, the inner reservoir where mana gathered, where spells were formed. Edward, no, Glick, was at the lowest rung, his spiritual C barely opened. No wonder the system was crippled. I need to grow, he murmured. Quickly. But, he clenched his fists. Growth in wizardry was not simple. Apprentices could spend years, decades, just to reach one ring. Many never advanced at all. Without talent, without resources, a wizard apprentice was destined to stagnate. And Glick Goldbeer, though intelligent, was considered a dabbler. A jack of all trades. A man whose curiosity had earned him scorn rather than respect. His inherited memories made that clear. No, Glick whispered, his golden brown eyes narrowing. That was the old Glick. I am Edward McAllister. I refuse to crawl at the pace of mediocrity. He turned back to the system panel. His gaze fixed on the words that made his blood race. 1% permanent stat or affinity gained from every merged creature or item. Permanent enhancement, he muttered. Not temporary. Not artificial. Permanent. A chill ran through him. The merge stone had consumed lives, machines, materials, merging them into unstable abominations. But this system refined that chaos into order, giving him stable growth. A scientist's dream. A wizard's nightmare. He stood abruptly, the chair screeching behind him. Then let's test it. The study offered little in terms of test subjects, but Glick's eyes landed on a candle burning low on his desk. Its wax dripped slowly down the bronze holder. System, he commanded. Activate spell merge module. At once, the panel shifted. Select spell. 0 ring. Available spells. Spark, minor cleanse, mana thread. Glick smirked. So, only apprentice cantrips for now, he focused on one. Spark. Select target for merge. His gaze locked on the candle. Merge with wax and wick. A pulse of warmth surged from his chest, traveling down his arm. His fingers tingled as faint threads of mana wove outward, guided not by instinct but by the system itself. They sank into the candle, wrapping it with an invisible aura. The flame flared brightly. The wax shimmered faintly with runic lines before stabilizing. The system chimed. Merge successful. Result. Sparkfire candle, a candle that never extinguishes until the wax is consumed. Flame enhanced, capable of igniting flammable targets instantly. Affinity gained, plus 0.01% fire. Glick's breath caught. He picked up the candle, its flame dancing higher than before, brighter, hotter. He touched the tip cautiously with a metal rod. Instantly, the rod glowed red with heat. It worked, he whispered. His voice trembled with awe. It actually worked. For the first time since his rebirth, excitement coursed through his veins. This wasn't just wizardry. This was alchemy of the impossible. He laughed softly, the sound echoing in the quiet study. If I can merge cantrips with candles, what about weapons? Armor. Creatures. His mind spun with possibilities. A sword merged with fireball. A cloak merged with invisibility. A soldier merged with regeneration. The path ahead was terrifying. Dangerous. Uncharted. But it was his. Glick sat back, forcing his excitement to cool. He needed to plan carefully. The system was powerful, yes, but reckless use could expose him. If other wizards discovered he possessed such an ability, they would not hesitate to kill him, or worse, dissect him. He tapped the desk thoughtfully. No one must know, not yet. His eyes drifted back to the status panel. His stats, his affinities. Quantified. Trackable. Progressible. This was the second chance he never imagined. The scientist in him whispered of experiments, trials, and data. The wizard in him, new, unfamiliar, whispered of rings, mana, and spells. Together, they spoke one truth. From 0 rings, I will climb, Glick said softly, determination sharpening his voice. And with this system, I will create something no wizard has ever seen. The candle burned brighter, as if echoing his resolve. In the silence of the study, Viscount Glick Goldbeer, once Edward McAllister, took his first true step on the path of the super-merge wizard. Chapter 3 The First Experiment. The quill still lay broken on the desk. The candle he had merged earlier burned with unnatural brightness, its steady flame a constant reminder of the impossible truth now embedded in his very soul. Glick, Edward, leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. The super-merge system was real. Quantified. Structured. Predictable. It was everything the merge stone had not been. For a scientist, this was paradise. For a wizard, it was a weapon. He tapped the desk with his finger, muttering, if merging even a candle works, then what about something alive? What about a creature? But before he could spiral deeper into his thoughts, a firm knock resounded against the study's oak door. Knock. Knock. Glick's sharp eyes narrowed. Enter. The door opened, revealing a tall, broad-shouldered man dressed in the Goldbeer household's dark green livery. His hair was graying at the temples, his posture ramrod straight despite his age. His presence carried the weight of decades of service. It was Steward Halwyn, the head of the Goldbeer Estate's administration. Halwyn bowed slightly. My Lord Viscount, forgive the intrusion, but there are pressing matters requiring your attention. Glick straightened in his chair, slipping easily into the noble's demeanor etched into his inherited memories. Speak, Halwyn. What demands such urgency at this hour? The steward cleared his throat. The merchants of Rivermark are pressing for lowered tariffs on lumber shipments. They claim the Crimson Alliance raids along the northern trade routes have raised costs beyond tolerance. If we refuse, they threaten to shift their contracts to House Vayner. Glick frowned. Even without fully digesting all of Glick's inherited history, Edward's instincts as a strategist told him what this meant. Rivermark's merchants were vital for moving Goldbeer goods downriver. Losing them would weaken the family's already tenuous standing. But more importantly, this was not urgent enough to derail his thoughts. Halwyn, Glick said smoothly, arrange for the merchants to be received at dawn. I will speak with them myself. Until then, maintain current tariffs. If House Vayner wishes to play at poaching contracts, let them. We shall counter with more favorable credit terms. The steward raised a brow, clearly surprised by the decisiveness. The old Glick had often wavered in business disputes, more comfortable with books and experiments than negotiations. Yet he bowed. As you command, my lord. I shall make preparations. He hesitated, then added, there is another matter. The apprentices at your sub-magic pen await your inspection. They request guidance on the feeding of the alchemical beasts. Now that caught Glick's attention. The sub-magic pen, a small facility within the Goldbeer estate grounds, used to house low-level magical creatures for experimentation and training. Most noble families maintained such pens. They were essential for both apprentice education and minor magical resource harvesting. A thought sparked in Glick's mind. Halwyn, he said, his lips curling into a faint smile. Summon the handlers. Have them prepare one of the larger beasts, a giant frog, if we have one available. Deliver it to the pen. I wish to conduct a personal trial. Halwyn blinked at the odd request, but his loyalty overrode curiosity. At once, my lord. As the steward departed, Glick's eyes glinted with anticipation. A living subject. Yes. This will test the limits of the system. The sub-magic pen smelled of damp stone, straw, and faint traces of alchemical residue. Torches burned along the walls, casting flickering shadows on the reinforced cages. Apprentices scurried about, bowing hurriedly as their lord entered. In the center pen, handlers dragged forth a creature bound in ruined ropes, a giant frog. Its slick, warty green skin glistened under the torchlight, its bulbous eyes rolling nervously as it croaked. The beast squirmed, its long legs kicking against the stone floor, but the bindings held firm. The handler bowed deeply. As you commanded, my lord, one giant frog. Captured 2 weeks past near the Phi Marsh. Medium tier, unaligned. Quite docile, though it has swallowed 3 of the apprentice's cats. The frog gurgled wetly, as if in confirmation. Glick waved the apprentices and handlers away, leaving only himself in the chamber. Good. Now leave me. This is a private matter. The handlers exchanged nervous glances but obeyed. Silence fell. The frog's heavy breaths echoed against the walls. Glick stepped closer, his eyes burning with scientific hunger. He raised his hand, summoning the system panel with a thought. Spell Merge Module. Active. Available 0-ring spells. Spark, Minor Cleanse, Mana Thread, Acid Splash. Select target for merge. Giant frog beast. Acid Splash, Glick whispered. Mana surged through his veins, a faint burning that pooled in his chest before rushing outward. He extended his hand toward the frog, his will guiding the system. Threads of emerald energy wove from his palm, sinking into the frog's skin. The creature croaked violently, its body convulsing as greenish veins of light spread across its surface. For a moment, Glick thought it might explode like the failed experiments of his past life. But then, stability. The glow dimmed. The frog stilled. Its eyes, once dull, now gleamed with a faint acidic shimmer. The system chimed in his mind. Merge successful. Result. Acid Spittle Frog, a giant frog mutated with Acid Splash spell. Abilities gained. Acid Spittle. Ranged attack, 15 featuring spray, 1d6 acid damage. Swallow, enhanced target takes additional 1d4 acid damage per round while swallowed. Host bonus, plus 1% constitution permanently acquired. Glick staggered, his eyes widening as warmth spread through his body. His muscles tightened slightly, his lungs expanded with new strength. It was faint, barely noticeable, but it was there. A permanent enhancement. He clenched his fists, exhilaration surging through him. It works. It truly works. Even with a creature of this level. He turned his gaze back to the frog. The creature croaked once more, but now its throat sac glowed faintly green. Fascinating, Glick whispered. This was no simple experiment. This was evolution. Controlled, structured, directed by his will. With every merge, he gained not only a modified subject but a permanent portion of its strength. The implications were staggering. Imagine an army of merged beasts. Imagine armor infused with regeneration. Imagine bloodlines reshaped not by centuries of breeding but by direct fusion. He laughed softly, the sound echoing eerily in the pen. Edward McAllister died in pursuit of the merge stone. But Glick Goldbeer will live to wield the super merge system. And through it, I will surpass every wizard in this world. The frog croaked again, acidic spittle sizzling as it splattered against the stone floor, leaving a smoking scar. Glick's smile widened. Yes. This was only the beginning. Chapter 4: A Lord's Bargain. Morning sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows of the Goldbeer Estate's audience hall. The room smelled faintly of polished wood and incense, its stone pillars wrapped with golden banners bearing the crest of a roaring bear. Glick sat at the head of the long table, the Viscount's chair slightly too ornate for his taste, though he leaned into the role with a calm confidence. To his right stood Steward Halwyn, his expression stern as always. To his left, clerks and scribes prepared their ink and parchments. Across the table, 5 merchants from Rivermark bowed stiffly. Their robes were fine but functional, marked with the insignias of trading houses. Each of them wore the look of men who had smelled weakness in the past but now approached cautiously, testing the waters of their lord's resolve. "My lord Viscount," began the eldest merchant, a balding man with sharp eyes. "We thank you for receiving us on such short notice. We must speak plainly, the tariffs your family imposes on lumber have become unsustainable. With Crimson Alliance raiders seizing caravans along the northern roads, our costs are doubled. If relief is not granted, we will be forced to redirect our contracts to House Vayner." The other merchants murmured agreement. Halwyn's jaw tightened, and he opened his mouth to argue, but Glick raised a hand to silence him. His gaze swept over the merchants, sharp and calculating. In his old life, Edward McAllister had negotiated with military boards, corporate investors, and political vultures far more dangerous than petty merchants. These men were no different, they smelled of desperation masked by bravado. Glick folded his hands. "Tell me, merchants, what is the true cost you fear? Is it the tariff, or the raiders who bleed you?" The eldest merchant hesitated, caught off guard. The raiders, my lord. But without relief, we cannot maintain profit margins. Then let us not dance around the matter." Glick leaned forward, his voice smooth but commanding. "You fear the Crimson Alliance. I will deal with them. In exchange, you will not only honor your contracts with the Goldbeer family but expand them. For every caravan I protect, you will send double the lumber through my routes, and in return, I will guarantee safe passage." The merchants blinked in surprise. One of the younger ones scoffed, "My lord, with respect, House Goldbeer has no wizard knights, no trained militia strong enough to counter raiders, how could you possibly guarantee such protection?" Halwyn bristled, but again Glick raised a hand. He smiled faintly. "How, indeed? That is my concern, not yours. All you need know is that the Crimson Alliance will soon find their hunting grounds inhospitable." The merchants exchanged nervous glances. The eldest cleared his throat. "And if you succeed, my lord, you would demand expansion of contracts. That may strain our ledgers." "Consider it an investment," Glick replied. "In stability, in profit, in the assurance that House Vayner cannot prey upon your desperation." His golden brown eyes hardened. "You are merchants. You gamble with coin. Gamble on me." Silence stretched across the hall. Finally, the eldest merchant bowed slowly. "Very well. We will extend our contracts, contingent on your success. But know this, Viscount, should you fail, our patience will end. Then it is settled." Glick's voice was final, leaving no room for argument. The merchants bowed and withdrew, their footsteps echoing down the hall. When they were gone, Halwyn turned to his lord, brows furrowed. "My lord, forgive me, but was that wise? We have little more than a token garrison. If the Crimson Alliance presses harder, your promise may ruin us." Glick rose from his chair, his expression unreadable. "Halwyn, you mistake me for a man bound by ordinary means. Trust me when I say, the raiders are the least of my concerns." The steward studied him, as though sensing the shift in his young master. At last, he bowed. "As you command, my lord." Later that afternoon, Glick walked through the estate gardens, his hands clasped behind his back. The frogs croaked faintly in the distance where the sub-magic pen lay, but his thoughts were elsewhere. The system needs more spells. Currently, he possessed only a handful of cantrips: Spark, Minor Cleanse, Mana Thread, Acid Splash. Pathetically insufficient for long-term progress. If he wanted to unlock the true potential of the Spell Merge module, he needed variety. Spells from every school, tools, abilities, enhancements he could adapt and merge into both creatures and items. But spells were not free. Wizards jealously guarded their grimoires. Even the most basic apprentice spells required coin, favors, or access to tower libraries. Which means I need money. The Goldbeer coffers were respectable, but not enough to buy him the freedom he required. He needed more than lumber tariffs and merchant contracts. He needed a steady stream of gold, and one that would not draw too much suspicion. Then the answer struck him, clear and elegant. Wizard items. Common and uncommon magical items, charms, enchanted trinkets, practical tools, were always in demand. Nobles craved them for prestige, merchants for profit, apprentices for convenience. Even something as simple as a self-heating kettle or a flame-less lamp could fetch coin. And with the system, he could create items unlike anything the tower had seen. A smile spread across his face. Yes, common and uncommon wizard items. Affordable, practical, endlessly marketable. His eyes gleamed. "I will create a market the towers cannot ignore. And with coin flowing freely, I'll buy every zero-ring spell I can get my hands on." He paused, staring up at the sky, where the sun burned high above the estate. Edward McAllister had been a scientist bound by the state. Glick Goldbeer would be a viscount bound by nothing but his ambition. The path was clear: expand wealth, acquire spells, experiment without limit. And with each merge, he would rise higher, until no wizard, noble, or king could stand above him. Dash dash dash. That night, by the light of his ever-burning candle, Glick drafted plans. Lists of potential items. Lamps infused with spark. Cleaning cloths enchanted with minor cleanse. Ropes enhanced with mana thread. Cheap, practical, effective. And when those took root, he would move to greater projects: rings, talismans, armor. Items that nobles would kill to possess. The systems panel glowed faintly in his mind, waiting. Glick's hand tightened around his quill as he wrote a single line at the top of the parchment. House Goldbeer Magical Goods Division. The scientist was reborn. The merchant lord was awakening. And the wizard was just beginning. Chapter 5: First Creations. The workshop smelled of tanned hides and alchemical dust. Sunlight filtered through narrow windows, illuminating rows of unfinished tools and scraps of leather piled against the wall. For the first time since awakening in this world, Glick felt the rush of excitement he had known in his old life, standing at the threshold of invention. The system panel hovered faintly in his mind's eye. Greater than spell merge module active. Available spell: Acid Splash, 0 ring, Spark, 0 ring, Minor Cleanse, 0 ring, Mana Thread, 0 ring. Warning: host spiritual energy low. Prolonged merges may cause exhaustion. He flexed his fingers, feeling the subtle tremor of strain left over from his earlier frog experiment. Even at this stage, the system's power was intoxicating and dangerous. I must start small. Simple items, easy to sell, and practical enough to draw demand without attracting suspicion. He looked down at the leather breastplate laid out on the workbench. Sturdy, serviceable, the kind of armor a common mercenary or caravan guard might wear. He placed his palm on it. System: initiate merge, minor cleanse plus leather armor. The panel pulsed. Greater than merging. Organic substrate, tanned leather. Spell essence: minor cleanse, 0 ring. Compatibility: 72%. Energy cost: low. Result: successful. The leather shimmered faintly, as though an invisible hand wiped over it. Dust and grime flaked away, leaving the armor pristine. A faint silver rune etched itself across the inner lining, pulsing once before fading. Greater than new item created: self-cleaning leather armor. Effect: automatically removes dirt, stains, sweat, and minor blood traces. Durability plus 10%. Glick chuckled softly. Perfect. A soldier's armor that cleans itself. No more scrubbing in rivers or paying washerwomen. Every mercenary in the Five Wood will want one. He set the armor aside and pulled out another breastplate, this one reinforced with metal studs. His expression hardened. Time to test defense. System: merge. Acid Splash plus leather armor. The runes burned brighter this time, the system warning him as a ripple of mana drained from his spiritual sea. His head throbbed, but he gritted his teeth and pressed on. Greater than merging. Substrate: tanned leather. Spell essence: Acid Splash, 0 ring. Compatibility: 61%. Energy cost: moderate. Result: successful with minor instability. The armor's surface darkened, taking on a faint green sheen. When he dripped a vial of alchemical acid onto it, the liquid hissed, bubbled, and slid harmlessly off, leaving the leather untouched. Greater than new item created: armor of lesser acid resistance. Effect: reduces acid damage by 20%. Durability plus 15%. Warning: instability detected. Prolonged exposure to high-grade acid may corrode. A grin split Glick's face. Armor that laughs at acid. Imagine caravan guards hauling alchemical goods, miners digging in toxic caves, the market is endless. He leaned back, breath unsteady, but satisfaction filled him. One day, I'll create armors that resist every element. But for now, even this is groundbreaking. Next, he reached for a different breastplate, this one blackened and patched. He whispered: system: merge. Spark plus leather armor. The workshop flared briefly, a ripple of firelight running across the leather. Greater than new item created: armor of lesser flame resistance. Effect: reduces fire damage by 20%. Heat buildup slowed. Glick tested it by hovering a lit candle beneath the leather. Normally, the hide would have warmed quickly, but now, nothing. He could barely feel the heat. He laughed under his breath. Excellent. Smiths, miners, soldiers, they'll all want this. Already his mind was racing. Once he acquired more zero-ring spells, Frost Touch, Shock Jolt, Stone Skin, he could expand his catalog. Affordable, functional items. Let the towers sneer at lesser enchantments, gold will flow into my coffers regardless. Finally, he turned to a length of sturdy hemp rope coiled on the bench. He placed it down, recalling the spark of inspiration from the night before. System. Merge. Mana thread plus rope. The rope vibrated faintly, the fibers twisting tighter as invisible runes crawled along its length. Greater than new item created. Tracking rope. Effect. Rope becomes semi-sentient once bound. Can follow and reattach to target marked with mana signature. Effective range. 200 feet. Durability plus 10%. To test it, Glick cut a short length and tied it loosely around a practice dummy across the room. Then he tugged the knot free. The rope slithered across the floor like a snake, winding itself back around the dummy as though refusing to let go. His eyes gleamed. A rope that hunts. Hunters will fight each other for this. Slavers will pay in gold. Adventurers will kill for it. The workshop fell silent again, the air heavy with the faint hum of mana. 4 items lay before him. Self-cleaning leather armor. Armor of lesser acid resistance. Armor of lesser flame resistance. Tracking rope. Each one unique, practical, and valuable. And each one, he knew, was only the beginning. Edward McAllister created miracles in a lab of steel and glass. Glick Goldbeer will create miracles in a world of mana and stone. He stared down at his creations, a smile tugging at his lips. Soon, he whispered, the merchants will beg for my goods. The towers will watch with suspicion. The nobles will covet what I make. And I will build an empire greater than even the Confederation dreamed of. The system pulsed faintly in his mind, as if echoing his ambition. Greater than host progress, first tier items created. Stat affinity plus 1%. Warning. Host spiritual energy critically low. Rest recommended. His vision blurred, exhaustion pressing against his skull. He staggered to the cot in the corner of the workshop and collapsed. As darkness claimed him, his mind swirled with visions of armor that shrugged off lightning, cloaks that hid the wearer from sight, blades that carried the venom of monsters. The path of science had ended in death. The path of wizardry had just begun.